Hey everybody. So I had a question about how simplex repeaters work. My name is Brad. I'm from Midstate Communications. Um, I'm one of the advanced radio technicians for my company. So had somebody ask me, how does a simplex repeater work? Not a lot of people know this, but simplex is just one frequency, direct communication to one frequency. So here's the issue that you have. Here's the situation, the lowdown. You have this hill in the way. You and your buddy are trying to get back to each other. Say, hey, when are you coming back for camp? Or when are you coming back to camp for lunch? Or what are you bringing for lunch? You're on this side of the hill. He's on the other side of the hill. He's down at the river, with his fishing pole. I'm not too historically accurate. I'm wanting to know how a fishing pole looks because I don't go fishing. I'm not a sportsman. I don't fish. I'm very bold, bland. But I do. I do ride ATVs though. I'll give you that. So here's how this is gonna work. So you and your buddy are obviously having this problem. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna get through this hill to get back to each other? And that's all simplex. This is the best way to describe simplex right here. Let me erase that and draw it a little bit more bold. And I just dropped a bunch of crap. And one of the markers that I'm gonna need too. So how are you guys going to get back to each other? This is what's called Simplex. For those of you who don't know what Simplex is, it's one frequency. If you go and get a GMRS radio from Walmart, one of those little bubble pack radios, that is, and if you turn it to channel 1, that is what is Simplex. You communicate between one radio to another. So, how am I going to get through the hill? Simple. Put up a little simplex repeater. A lot of people say, well, what if I just stick a radio at the top, nail it to a tree? That's not going to work. I'm going to promise you now, because if you don't add the repeater function, if you cut that repeater function off right there and just put this radio up there, this little radio, if you put that up there without that, you are pretty much just transmitting to that radio. It is not going back down here. It is not at all. Not going back. So you can forget putting it up there and expecting to get down to your buddy at the river. That's pretty much a stupid analogy. I'll put up a radio at the top of the hill and we'll just be able to communicate that way. No, because you're only transmitting to that radio. It's not receiving. It's not going back down here. Now, simplex repeaters are also known as parrot and STOFORD. Store and forward. And I particularly don't like this type of repeater. I generally don't use it except for demonstrations. I have numerous radios set up in my house to do demonstrations. Seeing that Midstate Communications is not that big of a company, we tend to work from our home, which is perfect. So I have like 3 of these set up as a repeater. One for simplex. Now that is the most annoying one that I have ever heard of. But for anybody who's going to ask, what kind of simplex repeater would you recommend if I were to get one? I would go with Argent Data Systems or Surecom. Both can be found on Amazon. Pretty expensive for the Argent Data Systems and a little less expensive for the Surecom, but it would be well worth it. Trust me. You're not going to be missing out on a whole lot. So the issue that I have, and we're going to erase that, we're going to redraw it. Top of that pretty little mountain, because it's got that little snow cap right there. I'm just being stupid. So you have your radio, and then connected to it is, so in my situation, it would be the Surecom repeater systems. I have had the Argent data systems. I do not care for it too much. If I were to use it, it would be in a mobile setting. In the van, I do use it as a mobile repeater. For the simple fact, if I was to have to communicate with somebody who was in one direction and I was in the other, that would work as a mobile setup. And all you would need is power connected to it, and I have that. So, and I'll get into that in another video, how to set up a mobile repeater. But tonight I'm only doing 3 videos: the object of Simplex, and the object of a Simplex repeater, and duplex repeater. So, Simplex, what's going to happen? And I'm going to erase these. What's happening here is whenever you hook up your Simplex repeater, it goes to the repeater. It goes to the repeater interface controller, which is the RIC. And like I said, I use the Surecom, so it's going to my Surecom repeater controller, and it's going out that way. But here's the interesting part. He is receiving. Here's the fun part. This is why it's called store and forward and parrot, which is the part that I absolutely hate about this. This is the part that I absolutely hate. Your buddy is receiving, but you are transmitting and receiving. You are getting both. So essentially, what's happening here is the Simplex repeater is what it's doing is you are taking the repeater, you're taking what you said, you're sending it to your buddy, but you're also getting it back. And that is the messed up part. That's exactly what I hate about it. And that's why it's called the parrot or the store and forward and Simplex, is because you're hearing exactly what you just said. So here's a good rendition of it. Hey, Brad, when are you coming back to camp? Hey, Brad, when are you coming back to camp? That's exactly what your buddy's going to hear. That's exactly what you're hearing. Because whenever you transmit, what it's doing, this is why it's called store and forward. What it's doing is whenever you transmit, it's recording it. And then it saves it. And whenever you let out that button, it's going to give it that hang time because it's got to put it back out there. But it's also coming back to you. So everybody who is over here heard what you said, but they're going to hear it 2 times. That's the messed up part. So ideally, people say, "Oh well, why do you have a Simplex repeater, or why don't you have a Simplex repeater?" Number one, why don't I? Why don't I ever use it? For the simple fact, I don't want to hear what I just said come back to me. And you know what? People are going to say, "Oh well, what if your buddy says something?" If I can ever get my marker to right. Well, good Lord help me. TXRX. Exact same thing. Your buddy is going to say something, and then he's going to hear exactly what he said, and then he's going to hear his whiny voice, and you're going to hear your whiny voice, and both of you are going to be like, do I really sound like that? Because I kid you not. I have been standing next to somebody, and I keyed up a radio, and I was talking, and I actually unkeyed the radio, and I said, do I really sound like that? I am not even kidding. So for people who can stand hearing what they just said come back to them, and people are going to say, oh, well, what do you set the radio to? I should have clarified this. You're setting it all to the same frequency. So you're buying 3 radios, you're setting them all to the same frequency, but one of the radios you're connecting a repeater controller to and setting it at the top of the mountain. That way, your buddy has communications, you have communications, and everything is going in a perfect loop. So hopefully in 10 minutes, that's actually gotten everything down. I was able to explain a duplex repeater in 5, so I don't know. But guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, subscribe. See you on the next video. Peace out.